the local fellowship, and we're in person today. It's about 16, 17 of us, I think. And everybody here wants to welcome everybody online. Let's open with a word of prayer. Holy God, we want to give you praise and thanks for your continued mercy and goodness towards us. Pray that you would give us a blessing today as we try to get a clearer understanding of your word and of your will. In Jesus' name, amen. We have two presentations today. Could you just lower the volume for me? I want to continue our discussion around Revelation 17. It's good. So, I've had some feedback, and there are a few people, which I guess means that there are others too, who aren't clear on what I've tried to share with respect to Revelation 17. So I just wanted to clarify things. I'll just say that, to clarify how I understand things. And I also want to add an additional piece of information that in Australia recently, I may have made a mistake, so I want to just go through that to make sure that if I did make a mistake, it's clarified and corrected. Anybody that's online, you can message me your thoughts or questions. But I'm unlikely to respond to them during the study live, because I just can't multitask that easily. So if you turn to Revelation 17, so the first part is, let's try to clarify some things, and then the second part is, I want to check if I've made a mistake. Revelation 17, verse 3. So he, the seventh angel, carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Gives a description of the woman and of the beast. explains some of her activities. This is verses 5 and 6. And then as we transition into verse 8, it begins to give further information or details about the beast. Talks about the different, I'll call it the different phases of the beast. It then goes on from verse 9 onward to try to define what those heads are. Any questions so far? Okay, so up to this point, what I've tried to explain or describe to try to understand is what is being portrayed to us in these verses. I have chosen, if I can express it that way, I've chosen to use two words to describe the two perspectives. So I assume we're all familiar with it. I've called one a panoramic view and one a dispensational view. For some reason, this seems to have confused people. Or they've not understood, or perhaps not even agreed with what I have stated. So I want to begin there. Can someone tell me what they think dispensational means? A dispensation. Anyone? Debbie. So we've got a period of time. Anyone else? No one else? Oh, sorry, Titus. An age? So I'm going to go with that if everybody's okay. It's a distinct period of time. And it's used So I'll put a particular. Yeah. So there must be some distinguishing characteristic between one period of time and another. And depending upon the study that you're doing or the story that you're telling, that distinction can vary. So we could have the Old Testament and the New Testament, two dispensations. Some people would suggest that the Old Testament is the dispensation of the law, and the New Testament. Go ahead. And then the New Testament would be the dispensation of grace. Everybody here shouted out. So we understand what dispensation means, I think. So in Revelation 17, when we speak about dispensations there, what are we referring to? In Revelation 17, let me first say this then. Do we see dispensations brought to view? And if you do, where do you see them? You can either give me a verse or you can give me a descriptor. So, two-part question. Do you see dispensations in Revelation 17? And if you do, describe them to me either by the verse or by the imagery. Natalie? So Natalie said, yes, there are dispensations, and the one that she's gone for is wilderness. Anyone else? Marshall, did you have your hand up? Or? Okay, so Marshall was going to say the same thing. Wilderness shows dispensation. I'm going to go to Rose. I'm going to suggest that it doesn't. So if you want to rethink or disagree with me, that's fine. But I don't think wilderness does. So have a read about wilderness. Rose? So Rosa said verse 8. And in verse 8, it speaks about the beast in different phases. Life, death, resurrection. So that meets the criteria of definition of dispensation as we've got on the board. If no one's got any question on what Rose has said, the example that she gave, I'll leave it there. I think it's sufficient unless someone has a question on that point. Okay, so Natalie, you said the woman. So initially you just said wilderness. I didn't hear the other bit initially. So it says that there's a woman who's scarlet colored. Is that dispensational? You're saying it is? You said yes. So let's go to wilderness. Where's wilderness found? Verse 3, yes? Gets carried away in the wilderness and sees what he's going to see. So I'll go with Natalie. Do you want to answer my next question, or Marshall? Yes or no? I know, but you want to answer it before I'm... Okay. We're in verse 3. We're in the wilderness. Tell me when we come out of the wilderness. I'm in 3a. I'm in the wilderness. Tell me when we come out of the wilderness. So this is going to have to be a specific verse you're going to have to give now. You can't ask me double questions because I can't hear what you're saying. We're in the wilderness in verse 3a. Tell me when we come out of the wilderness. Now, anywhere after 3a? So Natalie can't find anywhere that we come out of the wilderness. You can or you can't. Where does it say he comes out of the wilderness at the end of verse 3? So Marshall, do you see there's a problem in making wilderness a dispensation? Because what we have done, we've gone to other portions of scripture to define what wilderness is. Because all you're given here is a place that you're taken to where a story's being given. So I'm just going to say from memory, unless someone points it out, I don't see anywhere in the chapter that you're taken to another place. So the next point, we're in verse 4. And Natalie said that the woman is scarlet. So tell me after verse 4a, where she's in some different clothes. There aren't. I don't think it does that. So it's not that easy to see that the scarlet is a dispensational perspective. Someone speak? Verse 7, what happened? And? Okay, so verse 7 is not going to help us. Okay, so we've got, we have verse 8, which is the beast in 3 phases. Anywhere else? So, several people have gone to verse 10. Past, present, future, when it speaks about the mountains. Assuming that the kings in verse 10 are the heads and mountains of verse 9. We've got verse 8, which is the beast. And I'm going to put verse 9, I'm going to say it's the heads. It's a bit of an assumption. And anywhere else? Well, so we're in verse 11. Okay, so verse 11 and verse 8, I'm going to say are the same. Anywhere else? No other places? I'll go with verse 12. So, verse 12, I'm going to suggest are not the heads, they're the horns. Let me just clarify, let me just double check. Yep, I think they're the horns, and it says that they haven't received power yet. So there's a dispensation there. All okay? On the same page? Curtis? Yep. So a couple of people arrived a little bit late. So we're just doing a review to clarify some points that I've made about Revelation 17. I've suggested that there are 2 perspectives in the chapter, and I've called one of them a panoramic perspective and the other one a dispensational perspective. I'm going to put a tick where I've got dispensation, and that tick is meant to represent that the word dispensation is a common term that we use. I'm going to change that tick to, I'm going to put the word existing. We've defined what dispensational means. And panoramic, I'm going to put new. I'm going to say this is a word that I've inserted into these studies. What I've just asked, which is answering Curtis's question, where in the chapter do we see, or do we, first, it's a two-part question, do we see, and if we do, where, this concept of dispensationalism? And I've got beast, heads, and horns. I'm going to put ticks next to them. And some people suggested wilderness. And I put clothes. And I'm going to put crosses next to them. Does that answer your question? And the reason why I put crosses next to wilderness and clothes because it doesn't, within the chapter itself, it doesn't explicitly state that you ever come out of a wilderness or that she ever changes her clothes. So what we have done, long before we did any of these current studies on Revelation 17, however we did it, we turned wilderness into a time period, not a place. And a particular time period, which would make it dispensational. But I don't think I'm suggesting it's not explicitly stated in the chapter. So we made the 1260 time the wilderness. And we made this woman who was scarlet coloured the papacy. In the same time period. And again, I don't think you can see that explicitly, that they are dispensational. So I'm going to call that 1. If there aren't any questions, there are. Natalie? Everything that I've just said now is not different to what I've said previously. When I've spoken about wilderness and clothing in the past, I've just jumped forward several steps, which is something that we could do now, but we can't do it at this moment. So I'm not teaching anything new so far. Yes. No. It's not different. What I'm saying is, I haven't translated, I know I haven't repeated what she said. What I'm saying is this. If you're going to start with a blank sheet of paper, wilderness and clothing are not good examples. Scarlet clothes are not good examples of dispensationalism in this context, in this story. And every time I have made them dispensational, I've explained, even though it might be briefly, how you do that. And I just explained that now, that you turn a place into a time period. And then you say that woman is in that time period when she's wearing scarlet clothes. I'm not saying those ideas are wrong. I'm just saying they're not explicitly stated with just the symbols of wilderness and clothes in this chapter. All good? 2, panoramic. So people have struggled with what this is. Because I guess it's a new word. Not that it's particularly complicated, everybody knows what panoramic means. But when we take a word that's in relative common usage and bring it into a religious study, sometimes we can get problems. So let's begin with what we think panoramic means. Something funny or? Okay. Okay, so someone said panoramic means snapshot. So I just want to make sure if we're going to use snapshot, teachers in the movement in the past, maybe even in the present, used to go to Daniel chapter 8 and tease out the word vision. And they would see that English word vision actually, when you look through the verses carefully, is composed of, I'm going to call them Hebrew, I know they're probably technically not Hebrew, 2 Hebrew words. And those 2 words are, everybody's pronunciation is different, mine isn't very good, the Shazone and the Murray. So this wasn't me, but someone sometime called one of them the snapshot vision. So I'm not saying that I never repeated that term, but I don't like using snapshot when it comes to the visions of Daniel 8. I don't think it's a good descriptor of what, whichever one it was, the Hazon or the Murray vision was. The word snapshot or the term snapshot is not appropriate or very good. But I think I have used the word snapshot when I was pushed to explain panoramic. In hindsight, it's not a very good definition. I don't think it adds clarity to what panoramic means. So that's a criticism of me, not of what Charity just said. That's someone else. Broader picture. So I've got broad picture. The way you, Rose, just described it now, are you saying it's one picture? Don't do that. Tell me what the result is, not how you create the result. How many pictures do you have at the end? How many pictures? I'm not trying to force you to say something you don't agree with, but you got. So panoramic means one picture, which is a broad picture. And it's a snapshot. You still like snapshot, Charity? Do you disagree with snapshot? So you is snapshot wrong or right? Okay. Debbie? What we before we I repeat what we because I want you to say it again. You can't do panoramic compared to dispensation. I just want to know what panoramic means. Becomes problematic if you try to define panoramic by going to dispensation. 1 second. Naga. Can't do alpha and omega. Alpha and omega mean what to you? So you have a beginning, 1, and you have an end, which is 3. Because you've got a middle somewhere. So 3 separate things, or 2 if you prefer 2, beginning and end. What's that got to, what does that to, how do you tie that to panoramic? So what you've given me is panoramic means the whole view. So I'll just put the whole picture. Yeah. Because if you say the whole picture from beginning to end, that's a tautology. You're just repeating. If you say whole, you don't need to say the whole from the beginning to the end. Because that's the definition of whole. Everything. And everything would begin somewhere and end somewhere. So you'd either give, say, the whole picture, or the picture from the beginning to the end, which means the same thing. So I'm suggesting you don't need to do alpha and omega. Let's try to explain. So you wouldn't look at it from the whole picture. Okay. Blessing. Excellent. Did you tell us what the word was? Pan. Ah, right, good. And we all know that after we've been reminded. Yeah, I know. Because I haven't repeated what he said. Okay. So panoramic is it's a, I guess, Anglo-Saxon word. It comes from Greek. I guess it's made of several words. And we'll just take the first part, which is pan. And everybody has some vague understanding of what pan means. And Blessing said that pan means everything. Have I missed anything? 1 second. Sorry? So Natalie said, before, I want us to be clear Panoramic was a word that I inserted into this discussion, and it may not be a good word. Dispensation isn't one that I invented. Thousands of theologians have used that. If panoramic is a good, which means an appropriate word to use, then it definitely means everything. Or as we've got, the broad picture, one picture, the whole picture. So it does have everything. It's a good word because it shows you that everything is there. You can't say yes and no at the same time. It either is or it isn't. Natalie said it depends, and I'm saying it doesn't depend. It either means everything or it doesn't mean everything. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Leon. So we've got broad picture, which basically means history. Or in our case, a broad picture of this story that we're reading. A bird's eye view, you said. A bird's eye view, a view that a bird would have looking down at everything. Marshall. So we've got a whole picture or a complete picture. So I'm not looking for more definitions though, if they're all really close to each other. So Charity said that this all means from the perspective of the observer. And the dispensational view is from what perspective? You said the broad picture is from the perspective of the observer. And I just asked, the dispensational view is from whose perspective? from the same person, so there's no any difference. They're just two different perspectives from the same person. I'm not sure what you said that adds value to what. When the observer sees what they see everything. And when they look again, they see a part of this whole picture. So what have you added by saying that? Please don't give an example. Charity wants to give an example. I've got the word whole. I just want to know why it's important to say that it's from the perspective of the observer when everything is. The whole building is the whole building from the perspective of the observer. You're in the wilderness. You know, outside. Is it us or them? Okay. You're in the wilderness. And from the wilderness, are you able to see the whole picture? You're in the wilderness. In the verse, it says, I take you into the wilderness. And can you see everything? What does that apparently mean? Yes. And in the same wilderness, can you see some dispensations? Yes. So your point was? If I can see everything, and I can see the bits, the details, tell me what I can't see. You can't see behind. How big is everything? Is everything everything? So, as Debbie said, wherever the alpha is, relative to the wilderness, You can see it. We just haven't defined where alpha is relative to the wilderness. But whatever it is, it's included in the everything. What's irrelevant? To state that all of this is from the perspective of the observer, I'm going to say is obvious. Who's the observer? John. So all of this is from John's perspective. Not the angel. Because the angel said, I'll show you everything. And if John went to sleep halfway through, they wouldn't see everything. So we're trusting that John saw everything because John wrote what the angel showed him. And the angel said, I showed you everything. Are we all good? So Charity said it wasn't obvious to her that all of this was from the perspective of either John or the angel. Did I understand what you just said correctly? Then whose perspective do you think it would have been if not one of those two? Just a name. Okay. I'll move on then. Absalom, did you want to say something? Everyone good? Okay. Give me an example where it's panoramic. In the chapter, like we did with this, like we did with dispensation. Where do you see panoramic views? Titus, verse 18. What's verse 18 say? The woman which you saw is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. That panoramic view? Anybody disagree? You disagree, Kurt, Leo? Tell me why it's not panoramic. So I just said this is an example of panoramic or everything. And verse 18, what time is that? So you're saying that the woman is the city. We'll begin with that bit. So let me ask the question. Is the woman always the city? When was the woman not the city? You don't have to define anything. Just tell me she wasn't the city at the beginning or the middle or the end. Right? Okay. And then this city rules over the leaders of the earth. And you're saying these are only particular leaders, not all the leaders that ever existed. So you're assuming it was the 10 kings, not the 7 kings. Okay. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't then. I'm going to put it for the moment, verse 18. One sec. So I want stories that are panoramic. So we've got here, when we did dispensational, we said verse 11 is there. The verse 11 is a dispensational because it talks about 3 different time periods. I'll go with Rose first. Verse 8 is panoramic. Where's it panoramic?
The rise and fall of kingdoms. It has everything about the beasts that was and is not, which might be dispensational. It also tells us about those that are going to wander after the beast. It's also going to tell us.
So you're saying that verse 8 is the whole story of the beast in its 3 phases. And you're saying because it's the complete story of the beast from beginning to end, it's a panoramic view. Not a dispensational view. 3, so it's not, are you saying, I think you're saying it is 3 dispensational views, and the 3 dispensational views form the whole view. So you've got verse 8, and you're saying 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals the whole or everything. Okay? Anyone else? Comment, and let's just do with that one. Does anybody disagree, or we all agree? Curtis? And when to stop? When we define dispensational, we defined it as a particular period of time. The board's not showing for some reason. So particular periods or period of time. See what he's going to be doing, Rose? He's beginning to dismantle what you've said. What's that? Okay. I just wanted to see it in real time, not so people can see why he's doing this. Okay, so we've gone to the definition of dispensation. I had put period singular, and Curtis has said it could equally say periods of time. Carry on. So those periods of times are phases. So phases and periods are the interchangeable terms. A period of time can be three unrelated things, and if you change it to phase, they become related. Okay? And that relationship, that relatedness, so what can be described if you're talking about phases is various stages of a process. When you talk about phases, you know that they, by definition, mean there are differences between them, from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. You go to panoramic. And we take the word, I'm going to put the word everything because people are, oh, we've got everything here, yes, everything. I didn't hear what you said. Yes, everything. So when we use this word everything in this context, I'm going to use all of these definitions: the broad, the one, the whole, complete, everything. But everything is not equal to you said the full process. So I'm going to take the word full out. Because I'm going to suggest that the word process itself has the concept of full embedded into it. So everything is not the process. The process, can I put steps? So everything is not the same as the steps. And I'm just going to add then the individual steps, which is redundant. So we use the word in our studies, which is the word perpetual. So I'm going to use the word continual, because that's what translates for some people. Constant, unchanging. The word everything. See the same. So everywhere you look, it is the same. Looks the same. No change. At the same time. This is not a plug. Natalie? Oh, okay. Yeah. Who's lost? Okay, so Charity's lost. Rose? Yeah. So Rose, you said in verse 8, this is the whole story in its 3 steps. And then Kirsty said, it is the whole story in its 3 steps, for sure. But that doesn't meet the bar of being a panoramic perspective. Are you saying you agree with him? So he convinced you? Before you say something, I thought this might be quicker than it has taken, but it isn't. One of the things, the concepts that people have struggled with when I've used the word panoramic, because people, I'll just say, didn't understand or didn't agree with either the word or how I was using it, I began to question whether or not I had made a mistake. And it's not so much about the word panoramic, because I think we've defined that well. That's how I understood it before. But it's about this concept, this idea that the word panoramic or whole, complete, everything is not merely a summation of the parts. Summation means the sum, the addition. This here is the summation. Is that summation? What I had tried to explain, which is what confused people, which is what led me to think I may have been wrong, is that when you go to verse 8, you can clearly see, borrowing from what Debbie said, the Alpha, alive, to the Omega, resurrection, encompasses everything. So on the left side of the equation, you have the parts equals the whole thing. But what I had thought that I had seen, thought that I had understood, is that the idea of panoramic or everything wasn't just the idea of adding the parts together, like 1, 2, 3 is everything. It was the idea that panoramic or everything meant that it looks identical and it never changes. Which means it can't have parts to it. Which is, I think, what Curtis has said, rightly or wrongly. And it's this point that I wanted this to come to an agreement on, or an understanding of what everything means. Which is why it was really good that you pointed that out. Does it mean you add the parts together and they equal everything? Or does it mean that when you see it, you see something that never changes? I know that you had a comment, Charity, but I'm just going to ask Blessing, if that's okay. Yep. Okay. So Blessing said that seeing panoramic views in the Bible is not that straightforward. I just want to add to that. When you take your camera and you do panoramic view, it all seems really straightforward. And the problem with that is that that definition of panoramic that's on your phone is the details, but it's not the definition that Curtis gave. Sorry, Blessing. The reason why panoramic views are not easy to understand in the Bible is because how the Bible is written. And the reason for that is because the Bible is a book of examples. That's the way it's written. It's written as examples. So I'm going to assume that, Blessing, you have a similar idea of panoramic as Curtis gave. Which I'm going to just say unchanging or no change. And then Blessing introduced another. I'm going to say a related concept or another concept, or describe it in a slightly different way. He said panoramic has the properties of being a principle. So I'll let you explain a bit more. General, abstract, and unchanging. So these are characteristics of the word or the idea of principle. So the Bible can hint to this idea of principle, but it's not explicit. That's where it's not explicit. So it's not as straightforward to go to a particular verse and say that verse is a panoramic perspective. We're going to close now, but I just want to close with just a final thought. If we've all understood to at least some degree what Curtis and then Blessing has said, ages ago, I asked a question, a rhetorical question. Predates all the Sunday law studies. And I asked this very question that Blessing has has turned into a statement. Is the Bible a book of principles or examples? And if you go to stories, people will say examples. But I asked it specifically within the context of commandments or law. And we've all been taught that these biblical laws are principles. Especially the Ten Commandments. And even back then, I made an argument that I don't think that they were principles, but they were actually examples. Because you can't have a principle according to the definition that's on the board and speak about adultery. That's just because adultery becomes an example of some principle. And you go, I'm going to say virtually through every one of those 10 commandments, and you'll see they're examples of some idea. Okay, so we're going to close. And we're going to meet in 15 minutes. No, 15. We're going to close the meeting down, and for the technical people, we're going to restart it up so we're all ready to go. We'll start in about 15 minutes. "30 minutes past the hour, wherever you are." Holy God, we thank you that you can guide, direct, and bless us. As a teacher, it's my prayer that these thoughts and ideas become clearer to students of prophecy. Bless our minds and enlighten our eyes. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.